The following is a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.
Hey, welcome back to another UAB Director's Chair. My name is Tony Curry. He is Mark Ingram, the UAB Athletic Director. But as goes Blazers, he is on fire. And, of course, we're doing our show. He's got the bat in hand, ready to beat somebody over the head. And we're actually recording our show a little later on a Friday this time. We usually go on a Tuesday or Wednesday, and it works out great because of the SEC media days and everything else going on with the coaches' meetings. Not the media days, but the coaches' meetings going on. And, of course, this also $2.7 billion antitrust lawsuit that evidently has been settled, which is settled faster than any lawsuit I've ever seen settled. First, let's start right there. First of all, how are you? Everything's great, and congratulations, by the way, on your recent graduation with for your family. Thank you so much for sending the videos. I know we missed you last week, but family comes first. But what a fantastic week we had. Congratulations to you.
Yeah, thank you, man. Yeah, we're great. We were Amy and I have been super busy with our family. Our oldest graduated from Naval Academy last week, and so we were there, and they do a whole week of events and festivities around that beyond just the graduation ceremony. So it was a ton of fun to be a part of, and special, and it's a great honor and all those things, and so that was fun. So yeah, sorry for missing last week, but
No problem.
yeah, then this week I've been in Dallas, Texas at our conference meetings, and what you're talking about, the House settlement that was like the forefront of the conversation. And the House settlement is in two parts. The first part is this $2.77 billion settlement with student athletes from the Power Five only, who participated over the last 10 years. But while our conference wasn't named in the lawsuit because we've received NCAA revenues, the NCAA expects every conference that received NCAA revenues to participate in paying that settlement. So at the moment, it could cost UAB athletics almost $700,000 a year to pay for the next 10 years to pay off this settlement to kids that never went to school here. And it's not just UAB. That is true of every school in the group of five. And even furthermore, what about conferences like the A-10 that don't even sponsor the sport of football?
Sure.
And every league is different on how much they have to pay, and that's again based on how much they received in compensation from the NCAA. So it's a bitter, jagged pill for everybody to swallow. But we spent a lot of time with that this week. And then the second part of this is potential future compensation of athletes through a revenue sharing program that in the earliest draft is 22% of your revenues from your television rights, your multimedia rights, which would be signage and radio ads that we sell, and then ticket sales, but not donations. But so 22% from those three buckets, those resources or those sources of revenue, 22% up to a cap of 20 million annually. Well, we don't make 20 million annually, so
Yeah.
that cap is not relevant for me, but 22% of anything is money that we spend currently on our program. We spend it on the sports that don't generate revenue. And when I say we, I'm not talking about UAB. I mean, all of us, yes, the model was set up for the sports that generate more revenue to help offset and pay for sports that don't generate revenue. And you got a lot of great students and student athletes that have had access to education for over 100 years, who play sports. Let's say it's track or swimming or golf or tennis, sports that don't generate revenue per se, but have done great things for the university. Maybe they went on to the Olympics, whatever, through the opportunity provided in college sports, and that's how we fund those things.
Is that anything else that's going to be provided for or thought about? Because first of all, we spoke about this. You better have IRS or H&R Block on speed dial now, because if you're a student athlete that doesn't exist anymore, you're going to be paying taxes on these things. And not only that, but you were also, of course, given that scholarship. Is that something that they're going to have to pay taxes on now, or is that possible for the university to say, listen, since you're already getting this school, we're also giving you this other thing, we're paying you this thing, the name, likeness, or just to pay to play. We're also not going to charge you taxes on your scholarship money, and also just scholarships in general. Is that something that's going to be increased, decreased?
Yeah, there's so many details in that, Tony, that are unanswered. I mean, there's still we still don't even know the exact number we're going to owe in the settlement, the part one that I mentioned. So this part two is it's complicated. It's not as simple as the plaintiffs want to make it. It's like, oh, just start paying them. You've got the money.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, like, why is it just Power Five kids? I mean, the settlement is based on the fact that they couldn't benefit from the use of their name, image, and likeness over the last 10 years. Well, they haven't ever been able to do it. So why is it just the last 10 years? I mean, well, I don't agree with it. Why isn't it since the dawn of time? What about every former student athlete of any sport? Why is it just the Power Five? Why is it just football and basketball?
Why is it? Do you know? I mean, you
No,
have to have a starting
it's
point. You
because
either
that's what
started
the
somewhere.
plaintiff, that was the lawsuit filed.
Yeah.
And so, but the student athletes at UAB or Western Kentucky or Western Carolina or Samford or Jacksonville State or, Brevard College, they too could not benefit. So why are they left out of this settlement? Why is it just the last 10 years? I mean, it's just a remarkable, it's just a
So will you have?
devastating situation for everybody.
I'm assuming you're going to have some schools that will not be able to pay this. What happens to those schools? Do we
Oh,
know?
no, what will happen, Tony, is they're just going to reduce your NCAA share, what you would have gotten. Let's say if you were going to get $1 million and they want 600, you're going to get 400. They're going to take their share to pay the settlement. So you don't write a check. Then the second part, as I said, is this concept of paying them moving forward. You hit on a couple good things. Right now, the student athlete scholarship is not taxed by the federal government. If they get a cost of attendance stipend, that is also not taxed. We now can do the academic award that we frequently refer to as the Alston Award money. It's almost $6,000 a year. That is not taxed by the federal government. So will this new payment be considered the same or seen the same as those sort of awards? I don't know, and be not taxable, or will it or some of it or all of it become taxable? I have no idea. There's still a lot to be determined. And what we were told, this is another funny layer about it, is that we'll be permitted to do it, not required to do it. Or maybe the Power Four will be required to do it, and then the Group of Five is permitted to do it, but not required. That's the way we are with the Alston money.
Yeah.
The academic money, we're allowed to do it, but we don't have to do it. And so I don't think anybody in the American Conference does an Alston academic award right now.
Yeah, it sounds like that every a great college program out there is going to have to hire a sales staff because everything's for sale now. And I've been reading some articles since all this came down, and they're talking about putting patches, logos on jerseys. I mean, everything.
They're just trying to do anything they can to generate revenue. We are not pro sports.
Yeah.
Right? The Tennessee Titans do not have a track team. They don't have a track team. They don't have a swim team. They don't have a golf or tennis team that they support. They have a different mission. And by the way, they are profitable. We are not. So this concept of there's all this money. Well, if you cobble together my budget plus, Alabama's budget plus Jacksonville State's plus South Alabama plus Troy, you start to get to a big number. But I don't have access to those budgets.
Yeah.
I don't share their money. So, when you start talking about it like, oh, we should, there's all this money. There's not all this money. I've got a $47 million budget. We spend every penny of it back on our athletes, back on our travel, back on our clothes that we put them in, back on the food we feed them, and so on.
I know this doesn't affect Alabama schools because it's not legal here, but can you talk about the gambling aspect a little bit in that I'm assuming it's so funny because I just remember being out in Vegas like 7 or 8 years ago. You couldn't even bet on a UNLV basketball game 7 years ago. Now, of course, it's and I believe UNLV is actually being sponsored by Caesars. Are colleges? What's the protocol between colleges and gambling? Can they take gambling money? How does that work? Because there is a nut there. There's money to be spent there.
Yeah, there's an evolving landscape there. But a lot of concerns too. The American partnered with a company that helps watch for unusual behavior. And we did so to try to prevent, these bad actors from getting to these student athletes and having them throw games. They're just vulnerable, man. They're really vulnerable. It's a lot of kids, a lot of students. Many of them, won't play professionally. So somebody that says, "Hey, I could make you a couple 100,000 and nobody will ever know it," that it's just people make bad decisions sometimes. And it's just constant education with our student athletes. And I don't know where it's going to go. As you know, gambling is not legal or permissible in the state of Alabama. And so I think the thing that most people are worried about generally are these prop bets, they call them, which is who's going to win the coin toss or who's going to score the first point and all this.
How many points a particular player is going to score in a
how many
game.
the game within inside the game, those kind of things. And so it's a real fear for a lot of people. But now that it's becoming more prevalent.
And just so people understand it, and it is working so far. And I know that the University of Alabama, their baseball team had a situation earlier this season, and it's happened 3 or 4 different times. The whole idea, obviously, is you don't want your student athletes getting in cahoots, but the only way to really make it worth your time to make a lot of money is obviously is to throw a game. And if you're talking about throwing a ball game, you have to make a gambling or make a bet on that game. And so when someone would say, "Gee, I wonder why so-and-so on this particular team is over under maybe 26.5 on points," and all of a sudden you've got someone betting $10,000 out of the blue on the over on that. That's where those numbers come, and they do have a lot of things in the way to procure that and make sure that stuff doesn't happen, because that is certainly a red flag. So, and again, from the player standpoint, you're like, are you willing to throw away your whole life, for a $10,000 bet, even if you win it? It doesn't make any sense,
It doesn't make any sense, but again, Tony, you're an adult that's had time in your life and life experience to know that. If you were 19 years old, what sort of decisions might you make at 19 that you don't make today, right? A lot of them.
Sure.
And I'm not trying to make it okay by any means, but the point is we all got to acknowledge, like, we hopefully act differently today than we did when we were that age. And that's what you're trying to guard against, is those bad decisions.
I went to the SEC baseball tournament out at Hoover. I hadn't been there in a few years, and went to this past week, and had a great time. Took my boy and saw 4 games for $38. I thought, I miss these days of being able to see 4 games for 30. It was just fantastic. It was great. Can't do that in football anymore, anywhere. And so, we've had several shows about this. Me and Kip Kiefer have had a show, and I've talked about it on ABC 3340, which, by the way, you need to come visit us again on the starting lineup on Saturday mornings. And so I think the fan standpoint, I've gotten at least 20 emails addressing this show, wanting to hear from Mark Ingram on, as a fan, what's going to be different about the game? What should we expect that's going to be different? Is from a fan standpoint, will the game look or feel any different? And I can answer that question by saying, yeah, it's probably going to be hitting you in the wallet. I'd only assume.
What do you mean? Is it going to be different based
I don't know, because
as a result of this House settlement? What do you mean?
Yes, yeah.
Oh.
I think from the fan standpoint, they're like, okay, how does this affect me? And the only way I can think it's going to affect us is if UAB or Alabama or anyone else is going to have to start paying out millions of dollars every single year. That they're going to have to handle the cost. The funny thing is, I do think, I don't know what the tipping point is right now from a supply demand standpoint. Right now, everything continues to sell out, and the ticket prices continue to get higher and higher and higher. And I'm just wondering, where is that tipping point where fans finally say, "Listen, I can't do it anymore." But primarily too, because it's almost every game's on television. Will it look any different from a fan standpoint? Well, I mean, regardless of whether you're from a Power 5 or a smaller 5 or whatever. I mean,
Listen, the Power 4 leagues are going to have a large. I mentioned 689,000 from the American schools, and that's a rough estimate right now. It's not an exact figure. It sounds exact because I said 689, but it's still uncertain a little bit. But the Power 4 schools, their portion is larger than that per school. I worked, as you know, at Georgia and Tennessee and Missouri, and those are big budget schools by comparison to UAB. Of course, Georgia and Tennessee, they dwarf Missouri's budget, even though Missouri's budget dwarfs ours. but even, the ADs at those two schools are saying publicly, hey, we got to figure out a way to either generate a lot more revenue or cut some serious expenses and find a way to be more responsible with the money that we've got. That's two of the biggest budgets in the country. So, again, this notion that they just got all this cash just laying around like we don't know what to do with it, it's not true. And you go, well, what are they doing with all that? Well, they have more people so that they can provide more care to the athletes and they can recruit more effectively. Their pressure is really high to succeed, like it is for all of us, but the more you make, the more pressure there is there. And then, they're trying to provide more food and more snacks and more trainers. And then they've got facility things like, okay, well, let's do something for the fans and let's renovate the football stadium.
Mm-hmm.
But a $150 million renovation to try to create club seats or expand the bathrooms or widen the concourse and make the fan experience better. Well, now you got this monster debt.
Yeah.
You're also paying. So you go, what do you spend all that money on? Stuff like that.
The other thing I think is a little confusing for some fans is they don't understand the NCAA and the philosophy behind it running the March Madness tournament, and that's where they make the majority of their money. And then
Oh,
the
yeah.
CFP, which is not part of the
Those are
NCAA,
separate.
that runs. Can you explain? Because a lot of people just can't wrap their heads around that. They're two totally different things. And is the CFP part of any of this antitrust stuff? Are they in the how are they playing out in any of this?
I don't know how they're not, but they're not. And
How is that possible?
it's an excellent question. That's one of the frustrations, Tony, is that nobody from the group of five was involved in this settlement discussion or how it would be. We weren't represented at all. We were just told this is what you owe. And so where did that come from is a disappointing reality that we're facing here. The CFP is a separate entity from the NCAA. The NCAA manages all the championships except for the football championship, which is done by the College Football Playoff. Prior to that, for 20 years, it was the BCS, the Bowl Championship Series. So just like each bowl game, the bowl games are not NCAA events. It's two NCAA members playing in the game, but the bowl games are not managed by the NCAA. Those are all private entities. ESPN owns a ton of the bowl games. So the CFP is similar to more like a bowl game, really. It has its own organizing committee, their own budget, their own funds. They make money, they lose money. If it's profitable, it's profitable. And if it's not, it's not. It's on them. But yeah, the NCAA makes almost all of its money from the men's basketball tournament. And then, the women's basketball tournament has started to generate real revenue and the College World Series, both baseball and softball do really well. The Frozen Four, which is the hockey championship, does really well. And listen, they sell tickets to everything, but we forget that they are running the golf national championship, which is a multi-layered, event that generates little to no money. But they're trying to put a great experience together for all those student athletes that are at that event. We host the beach volleyball national title down at Gulf Shores. UAB, we host that with the NCAA.
Yeah.
They're trying to make a first-class event. It's the national championship. They're trying to make a first-class event for those teams who are there. Is it the same as the men's basketball Final Four? No, it's not. But it's really, really great. And how do they do that? Well, they do that with funding from the basketball tournament. So, there's all this money. Yeah, they spend it on the fencing national championship and the rowing national championship and the beach volleyball and swimming and track and all those championships that are awesome events, but they make them awesome because they got money to do it.
Yep. He is Mark Ingram, the UAB athletic director. We do a show every single week called the UAB Director's Chair. We have a brand new show we're going to be doing with UAB a little bit later on this summer, too. We're really, really excited about. So continue to listen up to TKR. Of course, it'll be available wherever you get your favorite podcast. Will be available anywhere in any major industry. Check it out, of course, right here on our YouTube channel, the Tony Curry Radio YouTube channel. info@TonyCurryRadio.net. info@TonyCurryRadio.net. I want to get in some classic rock. I'm going to throw a willy at you here. So something we have not discussed this, and I'm doing this on purpose because I really want it right at the top of your head. All right. So we're going to get into that in just a second. I do want to ask you about the Caitlin Carter thing. It's just been amazing. And I know that we live in a society where the news cycle is so fast, so quick. It's been a great story.
Yeah.
I think what's amazing about what has happened in women's basketball is it was so crazy because she is setting all these records and doing this in the NCAA. it seemed like the next night they had the WNBA lottery,
The
and then
draft,
and then the next night she's playing
playing
professional
for
basketball.
Fever, yeah.
Normally you see that over the course of 6, 7, 8, 9 months, and it's
Right.
like she went from playing for Iowa one night to playing for the Fever the next. It was just
Yeah.
amazing, and so
Yeah.
they didn't miss a lick of time. I mean, they struck
I
when the iron
know.
was hot, and that really played out well for women's sports. I want you as an athletic director to tell me just how big of an impact she is making, not only on college women's basketball, but on women's sports, period. Is it as big as the media is making it out to be?
Yeah, I think she's a player like Mia Hamm.
Okay.
Right? And now that's a bold statement. One of the greatest, if not the greatest,
Yeah.
soccer player in the history of women's soccer. But what was it about Mia Hamm? I mean, I don't really know, other than she was just awesome to watch. And there's a lot of awesome players. But why was Mia so popular? I'm not sure. Caitlin Clark is really popular. I've heard a lot of different opinions. Some of those opinions upset people to hear that, what those might be. But uh, I remember going home one day after work. I get home and my younger son Charlie is watching the Iowa Ohio State women's basketball game, which is when Caitlin Clark beat the scoring. She set the new
Mhm.
scoring record, and she brings the ball down the court, and she is like what I'm going to say looks like 15 feet beyond the arc or something. And she's just like bringing the ball up and then just bang, hits it. And then she makes it. And that was the one that broke the
Yeah.
record.
Mhm.
And like she does that all the time.
Yeah.
That's what I think is fun to watch is
Dude,
look, I could shoot it. Any of us could shoot it from
I
there.
can't
But
shoot
she makes
from
it.
that far, let alone make it that far.
It's like
I'm
she's
serious.
making a
I
half
can't
court
make a
shot.
shot.
Yeah, she's
I
making a
don't
half
think
court
people
shot
realize
for fun.
what kind of muscles you must have in your legs. Forget the arms and the shooting. But I actually tried to shoot a 3-pointer and I couldn't get it to the basket.
Yeah. She's a
Yeah.
creative passer. Look, she's got great vision on the court.
Mhm.
She doesn't just score a lot of points. She's got a lot of assists too. She's a
Is there a
really
reason why we haven't seen not to belittle her Caitlin Clark? It's been unbelievable. Not to belittle what she's done, but is there a reason why we haven't had such a transcendent, unbelievable player of her magnitude yet, or am I missing something?
I mean, we've had other great players. Listen, Connecticut's had a bunch of great players. Sue Bird, Diana Taurasi. They've had great players. Candace Parker from Tennessee.
So what's the difference between
Tamika Catching.
yeah, because I've been following UConn basketball. Tennessee, of course, Pat Summitt was on our show a million times. I used to follow Tennessee basketball. Why weren't some of those other women as transcendent or so easily
Oh, look, man.
marketable?
Listen, Tony. See, I think they were. I think the difference is, let's take Tamika Catchings and Candace Parker and Sue Bird and Diana Taurasi from
Mhm.
when they came out of school into the WNBA. Social media did not exist. So that's part of it. That really
Yep.
is part of it, is just the ability to get information out to so many different groups of people, instantaneously. I think that's a big part of it. But I think they were considered transcendent players. I don't think people look at them like they weren't. I just think Caitlin Clark is that player today. I don't. Everybody's trying to say like it's no different than like LeBron versus Jordan. Man, they're both great. They're
Yeah.
just different times. That's the way I see it.
It's pretty amazing what she has done, and again, I think there's a little bit of certainly everything she's done, which has been amazing, and it's been a wonderful story. And I know there's also this idea that it's because she's white, that she's attractive. I understand that side of it, and I do think the stars have aligned just perfectly. But I do love the fact that they get out of college, man. They're playing professional basketball within like 3 or 4 nights. I was like, wow, she had no time to rest the legs, man. I mean, she got after it. I mean, she was
Yeah,
playing ball
I
within a
know
week.
that the timing of that draft is there for a reason, but
Yeah.
when you look at the difference between men's basketball and women's basketball in that subject, in that manner, like men's basketball, they have all these, the NBA conducts all these tryouts, they have all these camps. Eric Gaines, our player, went to Portsmouth to this invitational tournament event to showcase his talent. I don't know why the WNBA doesn't do that. Maybe they just can't. I don't really know. I don't know enough about it all, but it's really fast. I mean, look at the way it's awful that I can't say this young woman's name. One of Caitlin Clark's teammates went to the draft to support Caitlin.
Mhm.
He got drafted, and they
Yeah.
pulled her out of the stands.
Mhm.
And she's like,
How
"What?"
awesome was that?
They
Yeah.
were, yeah, you got drafted. Oh, all right. I guess I'll keep playing basketball.
Like she
She's
had
like,
no clue.
"Did this happen?" Yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of odd. So, there's some things like that about whether that who is that? Is that the WNBA or the process? I don't know. I'd like to see that different. I think that there's opportunity for evaluation and of sort of that whole process, it seems like.
Yeah, well, and kudos to the likes of ESPN and certainly some of these college channels that have really spent a lot more time covering women's sports as they certainly should, and because of that, I think they've gotten a lot more look-sees that a lot of people wanted to see, and it's great. Listen, more sports on television is always a good thing, regardless of whether it's women's or men's or anything else. So it's good stuff. All right, so we were having this discussion on Fox 6 earlier this week. I was
Okay.
on with Janice Rogers and Mike Deverly and my knucklehead friend Josh Claypo, my Korean Claypo guy. And we were talking about classic rock music because I'm the classic rock guy. And they're like, "Oh, we're talking about classic rock." I said, "Fine." And so they said, "Come up with something to talk about." And so I came up with some ideas because I had heard this song. I don't know if you remember the song called "Midnight at the Oasis." Midnight at the Oasis, send your camels to bed. Okay, so
I'm
since this
sure it sounds just like that too.
it was a number one hit. Okay, it was a number one hit. It was from 1974. Her last name was Mulder. And I remember hearing that song because I was in my basement in Cincinnati, Ohio, which you will know a lot about, during the breakout, the 1974 April 4th breakout of tornadoes in the tri-state area. I don't know where you were in 1974, but it was the largest to date, the largest outbreak of tornadoes we've ever had in the history of this country. And I remember hearing that song on 700 WLW.
Yeah.
And there was also actually a hit song of the Lord's Prayer, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be." They were playing that thing like every hour on the hour because there was so much loss of life. And so we were talking about songs that we remember that set us back in time. So I started throwing out different things because Dubs played ball, and I said, "Give me a couple of songs that you remember listening to when you were playing high school and college football." So he's like, "You got to ask Mark these questions because Mark,
Yeah.
you played, but
Send
then
your what to the Oasis?
send your camels." It's called "Midnight at the Oasis."
Midnight at the Oasis.
Yeah.
Man, I don't know this one.
But I promise you play it. Go ahead and play it. We're good.
Yeah, okay.
You hear yet?
I mean, I've heard this.
Yeah.
Send your camel to bed.
Lead
All
your
right.
camels to lead your camels to bed. All right. The point is, it's like people are
I'm
like,
sure
"What the
I've heard
hell?"
that song, but
The
that
point
was
is,
number one.
well, yes. The point is, the song is so far out there, like, wow, and the psychology of that song that I can still hear that song, and it takes me back. It gives me the heebie-jeebies because I think of those tornadoes, I think of those storms. So we were talking about the songs that make us think about wonderful times in our life or traumatic times in our life. I remember the first time I ever kissed a girl. I was playing Spin the Bottle with a girl named Annette Dolby at my neighbor's house. I was 16 years old, and the song Babe from Kiss, or from Styx, was on the radio. And so now, whenever I hear the song Babe, and from this day on, every time I hear that song Babe, I think about that first time I ever kissed a woman playing Spin the Bottle. For you kids out there, I don't even, do kids even play Spin the Bottle anymore? I don't even, I don't
Maybe their iPhone, maybe.
think it's it. You would. If I told my son about Spin the Bottle, he'd probably laugh. He'd go, "What? What you took a bottle and did what with it?" Um, so Mike asked me specifically, he says, "You do a show with Mark, ask him what some of his songs were that he worked out to when he was doing football and when you were in college." I said, "I certainly will, because we know you were a player." Were there some songs, some walk-up songs for you, or some songs you got into? And then I want you to share some songs that when you hear them, like your wedding song, or the first song that you maybe had a date to, or some songs that mean a lot to you.
Hmm. Well, the era that I played college football, really heavy, really like what we thought was heavy rock music, Metallica, this kind of stuff was really popular in the weight room. I mean,
Yeah.
that was stuff that, you know, was always on. Something like AC/DC
Mm.
was always loud. Something really in your face. The song "Dream a Little Dream" from the Mamas and the Papas is a
Right.
song that always, for some reason, makes me think of vacation. I don't know if I heard that driving to the beach or something. Also, like any Beach Boys song, my dad was a big Beach Boys fan.
Did you see John
I was a
Stamos
Beach
is playing
Boys-
with the Beach Boys now?
Who
John Stamos?
is he really?
He's joining the Beach Boys this summer on tour. Yeah.
There you go. There's some great documentary about the Beach Boys on Disney that I haven't seen yet, but
Yeah.
I've heard about. Yeah, there's and like what my parents always called Carolina beach music, which is not really a real genre for anybody in the world other than people who live in the Carolinas, and they
Mhm.
know what that means. If you say that, they know what that means, and like, well, who is that? And you got to like research that out. But there's all these great songs that make me think about, different childhood trips to the beach or places around the coast of North Carolina when I was a kid.
Any summertime songs in particular? They were doing all these summer songs, and I was like, and I just, it's funny because I couldn't really name anything until I actually heard the song. I remember being at I remember being at band camp, which is you talk about camps for football teams. Band
Yeah,
camp, you had to wear a uniform for a week. We were at some camp for Camp Pendleton or something. I forget it was in
yeah,
Kentucky, and we took a bus out there. And I remember "Stroke Me" from Billy Squier had just come
yeah,
out. There was a huge song, and there was a jukebox in the room. And I remember hearing that song. And so every time I hear that song, it takes me back to blowing the horn, blowing the trumpet.
yeah,
But yeah, just hearing some of the songs that really transcended and made me think about some older softer times. Chevy Van was another song that Josh Claypo said, you can't you probably even hear that song on the radio anymore. But for
yeah,
some reason, whenever he hears that song, it takes him back to a happier, simpler time.
yeah. Well, I mentioned the Beach Boys. Another band that's really old like them is Jan and Dean, who a lot
Oh
of people
man.
confuse their music with the Beach Boys.
Hmm.
And they had all kinds of Little Deuce Coupe and Surf City, Here I Come,
You
and
ever see Dead Man's Curve?
Dead Man's Curve.
Oh
Yeah.
man, have you ever seen the movie?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah. I remember watching it when I was like 15, 16 years old. And Jan and Dean, I actually brought them on stage at the Alabama Theater in 1989. It was one
Oh,
of the first
great.
shows I brought here. And I did not get a chance to get Jan to sign an album. I had Dean, he wrote Have a Bitch in Summer, and he signed it and Dean. And he said, if you get Jan to do it, because Jan obviously has been messed up for quite some time now. And I said, you know what? I think I kind of like it without Jan's name on there, just
Just
because you can
and
see just
Dean.
and Dean. Yeah, I'll show it to you sometime. It's really cool. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember one summer, the Cyndi Lauper song "Time After Time" had been released, and this was back when like you would drive and you just listen to the radio,
Mhm.
and it just was like on repeat. It felt like it was on repeat. We took a 5 hour drive and I heard it 19 times in a 5 hour drive. But it's funny how certain songs will just take you right back to that moment.
Isn't it weird? And I don't, I remember being on vacation with a friend of mine. His father ran the Casa del Marina down in Key West, and I was in high school. I was 17 years of age. And for some reason, I remember the song the Pointer Sisters called "Automatic." Do you remember that song,
Yeah,
Automatic?
automatic.
And for
Yep.
some reason, I have no idea why, but now whenever I hear that song, and it wasn't a huge hit, but whenever I hear that song, it takes me back to walking on that beach at the age of 17 in Key West, of all places. And I mean, I've been all over the world. For some reason, that really stuck with me.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Well, think about some other songs. I'm going to have something better to get into next week in Classic Rock. We
All
got a
right.
bunch of lists that we have to get through because we are inside 100 days to college football season.
Really important.
It's going to be huge. And of course, again, we got a very special presentation coming up here with Trent Dilfer and Andy Kennedy. We're looking forward to doing along with yourself with UAB. And so that's going to be awesome. UABsports.com, UABsports.com. Check it out. info@TonyCurryRadio.net. If you have any information or questions you want to give to Mark next week, feel free to do that. And go get yourself some rest. Have a great weekend. And thank you, brother.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Appreciate you.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.